Welcome to another Nonsense Wars production. Today's video features my 1:48 scale Fairbanks Morse H10-44, an engine I built in 2015 but never documented. The prototype was a mid-1940s yard switcher styled by the famous Raymond Loewy. The model started with a PF drivetrain, but I soon had other uses for the motors and converted the FM to 9V since it had the right wheel spacing. Despite the increasing prevalence of PF trains on the whole, Baylug still mostly operates 9V trains at shows, and the FM started seeing a lot of action pre-COVID as I got rid of other 9V options. In the CP business car video, I talked about my building process. In this video, I will talk about some of the macro and micro details of the model itself, since the current iteration of this loco does not have any significant mechanical elements. While the FM has a fairly simple shape, two boxes with some curved surfaces, I always start with a drawing to ensure that these features have the right proportions: lengths, heights, widths, and offsets. Fortunately, at 1:48 scale, the cab measures 5 studs long and the hood measures 28 studs long. These aren't always nice numbers. If either box were half a stud longer or shorter, I would have to choose whether to round up, round down, or build some of the hood with snot in order to get a more accurate length. Of course, these macro design decisions will have trickle-down effects on smaller and smaller details. For example, I built the hood studs out in order to accommodate structure for the PF elements in version 1. As such, any features on the side of the hood now have a maximum resolution and a minimum offset of about 1 stud. If the construction were studs up or studs sideways, I would have a tighter resolution and offset in the studded direction thanks to plates. Nonetheless, with studs out construction in mind, I can choose what details to explicitly model and what details to not explicitly model. Now, these rear grills are about 2x2 and 1 stud apart, so they look good. This front grille is 5 studs long and roughly square, so that looks good too. The handrail won't quite be at the right height, but I think it's important to the overall aesthetic, so that's good as well. Unfortunately, the doors along the bottom are all 1.5 studs wide, so there's not much I can do to explicitly model those. Similarly, I decided not to model the gentle slope on the front of the hood, as it does not stand out on the prototype, and LEGO does not do gentle slopes well in most stud directions. Even though I say explicitly model, I still have to compromise somewhat on these features due to the limited selection of and the minimum size of LEGO parts. The dividers in the front grills and both entire handrails are much too thick and at least slightly offset from where they should be. Nonetheless, I think those are quite explicit compared to the pattern of 2x2 and 1x2 tiles I used to suggest the doors. That is much more of a cartoon. these trade-offs occur all over the model. The rear windows aren't quite the right size, the end railings aren't quite the right shape, and more subtly, the steps are attached to the bogies rather than the frame, etc. At some point, you also have to sacrifice the accuracy of one feature for another feature, and in some ways the art of LEGO modeling revolves around which features you prioritize. Ultimately, though, most people will view the model from enough distance or from a small enough picture such that the details become much less important than the overall shape, which is why I place more emphasis on the latter. The rear windows and the end railings only need to credibly suggest the prototypical features, much like the doors on the hood. What constitutes credibility, though, is, again, an art. Finally, for a lot of small greebles, you can often find better representations simply by looking at more parts and trying different combinations of parts, but I think it's a slippery slope with diminishing returns. On that note, this is the end of the video, but as a footnote, I've gotten enough requests for instructions such that I've opened a rebrickable store. I will be making an increasing number of instructions or CAD files of old and new models available for sale at what I hope are relatively low prices. Feel free to make requests and have a nice day.